We begin tonight at 6 o'clock with an IU lecturer pulled from the classroom. She says it happened after a student complained about a lesson discussing white supremacy.
As our Ashton Hackman now explains, that student used an Indiana law to take that complaint all the way to Senator Jim Banks.
Social work lecturer Jessica Adams says this graphic is behind the complaint that cost her a class this semester. She says she used it during a lecture on systemic racism. It's known as the pyramid of white supremacy, categorizing phrases as socially acceptable or unacceptable forms of racism. Adams says a student in her master's class accused her of equating Make America Great Again with police killings of people of color as similar forms of white supremacy. Adams couldn't go on camera today, but one of her students denies that claim.
None of these things were mentioned at all. We don't feel that that's what is being said in these slides.
Indiana law called SCA 202 allows students to report teachers or institutions they believe prohibit free speech or intellectual diversity.
I think what you have here is a volatile mix.
Steve Sanders, an associate dean and professor with IU Maurer School of Law, says Indiana's law enabling this complaint causes some educators to take a closer look at what they are teaching.
I think SCA 202 was unwise. I think it really is an incursion by political actors into the academic process.
He points to Senator Banks' office being the first recipient of the complaint before it went to IU admins.
Jim Banks, goes ballistic and decides, why are we teaching our students that being a member of MAGA makes you a white supremacist? We don't know that that's what the professor was saying.
I think we would be able to have a measured and thoughtful discussion as a class where people are able to voice their opinions.
A discussion now front and center over academic freedom and political pressure. In Indianapolis, Ashton Hackman, 13 News.
An IU spokesperson tells us the university does not comment on personnel matters. In the meantime, Adams still teaches 3 other IU classes, but there's no word of whether or not she'll be back to teach the class that she was removed from. Angela?
Emory, not as cold as yesterday, but we're still as cold as 32 in the eastern part of our area, as warm as 42 in the western part of the state. Right in the middle, we have middle and upper 30s, from 35 in Kokomo to 38 in Indianapolis, 41 Bloomington and Bedford at this hour. Evening forecast will be somewhere between 35 and 40 over the next several hours, with still some clouds overhead. The Wednesday forecast, heavy coat weather to start, but dress in layers. Won't need that heavy coat all day. We're at 50 by noon. Highs tomorrow in the mid-50s, and just the beginning of a warming trend that will take us close to 70 in the 7-day.
Thank you, Angela. We know that many of you have questions about why charges are not yet filed or if they will be filed in the death of a cleaning crew worker who was shot right outside someone's front door in Boone County.
Yeah, we're told it could still be days before we have those answers. So in the meantime, right now, while we wait for the Boone County prosecutor's decision, our Jenna Webster has been looking into the laws he has to consider, and this is complex.
Yeah, and they have said that there is a lot of unique circumstances and complex facts to this case. It also cites Indiana's Stand Your Ground law as reasons why this case requires such a detailed review. So we did want to take a moment to explain what your stand your ground law.
So if we consider in the context of this scenario, the evidence that the prosecutor is gathering right now is evidence where they're evaluating whether or not this homeowner acted reasonably, whether or not their belief that that level of force was necessary under a totality of all of the circumstances of this case.
That criminal attorney who you just heard from says that reasonable piece is really just very important when we're considering this, because the prosecutor has the burden of proof to prove the person who used force did not act reasonably in this instance. There's quite a few things that they actually have to consider, whether the person had the right to be there, like if they're at their home, they have the right to be there. If they were acting reasonably, kind of like we talked about. So just a lot of very complex facts that we have to think about. And one of those facts could be as simple as whether the person was ringing the doorbell, whether they were jiggling the door handle. Another IU professor of law who I talked to says it really could be kind of a gray area in this instance. And she says it could actually have implications for civil lawsuits too. And having a self-defense can make filing those civil lawsuits just a little bit harder to prove in that instance too.
Well, this is such a tragic case overall, and there's been such a conversation conversation of people trying to figure out where do we go from here. And so I know it's one you'll continue to follow for
Yeah,
us.
and we'll continue to check in and figure out if there will be charges filed in this.
Okay. All right, Jenna, thanks so much. All right, if you got a text message today and it's asking you to support congressional redistricting, you're not the only one.
Nope, this is part of a six-figure campaign that's now out to get undecided lawmakers to support redrawing the maps in Indiana. So a group that's called Fair Maps Indiana is behind this push, and it is run by a group that has deep ties to President Trump and that has also helped with his election campaigns. Part of this involves texting constituents, urging them to sign a petition that supports redistricting, and also urging them to call their senator.
You know, for decades, we feel that these maps have been drawn at a disadvantage to Republicans in the House. This is an attempt to level the playing field, and we're committed and locked in through the special session and do our part to help, and hopefully the Senate does the right thing and votes to, to redraw our lines.
Next month, lawmakers will consider redrawing the congressional district lines to shore up Republican seats for the 2026 midterm elections.
And this is all happening after months of pressure from the White House. But those against the idea signed petitions of their own. Senate leaders indicated a few weeks ago they don't have the votes just yet.
The federal government shutdown could last a few more days because members of the House who've been kept on recess since mid-September are still right now in the process of making their way back to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, they're supposed to be there tomorrow. So tonight, our Emily Longnecker touched base with several members of Indiana's congressional delegation. She has their thoughts on where things stand.
This week, House members could vote on legislation to reopen the government, a vote the Senate took Sunday. In a vote of 60-40, just enough moderate Democrats joined Senate Republicans to pass the funding bill. The bill's passage broke a stalemate in what's now become the longest government shutdown in history. 42 days. During that time, federal food aid has been delayed. Delays at airports across the country have worsened, and hundreds of thousands of federal workers have not been paid. Following the vote, Indiana Republican Senator Todd Young issued a statement which said in part, quote, "I urge my colleagues in the House to pass this bill and get it to President Trump's desk to be signed into law. It's time to get back to work on all of the important issues facing our country." The bill voted on by the Senate extends funding for most federal agencies until January 30th, but it does not include an extension of certain health care subsidies tied to the Affordable Care Act, which are set to expire on December 31st. This expiration is expected to cause significant premium increases for many who get their health insurance through the ACA, something Indiana Democratic Congressman Andre Carson addressed in this post on X Monday. It read in part, quote, "Without extending Affordable Care Act tax credits, millions will see the cost of health insurance double, and hardworking Americans just can't afford that." In his post, Carson said he would not vote for a government funding measure that, in his words, quote, "doesn't protect health care." 13 News reached out to other members of Indiana's House delegation. A handful sent statements, including Republican Congressman Rudy Yacob, whose statement said in part, quote, "I look forward to voting to reopen the government and continue to work to make Indiana's 2nd District the best place to live, work, and raise a family." In her statement, Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spartz said in part, quote, "We need to open the government, pay our military, and provide essential services. This CR doesn't increase spending or set us up for a Christmas omnibus, so I will support it." Congressman Jefferson Shreve also issued a statement, part of which said, quote, "I'm encouraged to see bipartisan movement to get things back on track. It's time to restore stability, get federal employees back to work, and keep serving the American people." Emily Longnecker, 13 News.
And want to remind you can catch a new episode of our political show, Crossroads Politics. It is streaming on WTHR Plus Sunday mornings at 10.
And this week, we're following the government shutdown as a potential deal draws closer. We also are talking redistricting.